Hi, welcome to the Carla Knits podcast. My name is Carla, and this is my podcast where I talk about knitting and crocheting and all the yarny goodness that I love. I live in Nebraska with my husband Jeff and my daughter Jenna and our cat Reese's. When I am not knitting or crocheting or playing with my yarn, I teach piano at a local college, and I am also a church organist. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for all of you who have been following me on this new podcasting journey of mine. Thank you for subscribing and liking, and welcome to any new viewers who might be joining for the first time. Before we get started, thank you for those of you who wished me a happy spring break. I took a 2-week break from podcasting, and I did enjoy my spring break. I got a lot of knitting done, which I'll be excited to show you today. And my husband and I also got to enjoy some time at a nearby lake where we did some walking, hiking, and had a picnic on one of the nice days. And we also did some antiquing. So it was a lovely spring break, but I'm very happy to be back with you all today. A thank you to a couple podcasters out there. Just consulting my show notes a moment. Excuse me. A thank you to Colleen of the All in Stitches with Colleen podcast. She mentioned me on her latest podcast, and that was just so sweet of her. So thank you so much, Colleen. She is a quilter and a knitter and a stitcher and a needle felter. I would call her a crafter extraordinaire. So thank you again, Colleen. And then also a thank you to Amy of Noble Character Crafts, the Noble Character Crafts podcast, who I have followed for a long time, and I have purchased many skeins of yarn from her in the past when she was hand dyeing yarn. She shared on her Insta stories on Instagram about my podcast. So that was so sweet and very appreciated. So thank you, Amy, and thank you, Colleen. All right, well, let's get started with some knitting. I'll first share what I am wearing today. Can you tell there's a theme? I kind of like bright pink. I wore my bright pink Soldotna a few weeks ago. But this is the, I don't know exactly how to say this, but the Sipila or Sipila sweater by Caitlin Hunter of Boyland Knitworks. I knit this last spring when things were kind of going crazy in our world, and I was just craving happiness and brightness, and this absolutely brought me much joy to knit this. The Sipila or Sipila is named, I thought this was interesting, I was looking this up today. This is named for Caitlin Hunter's Finnish grandmother's maiden name. So that was a really sweet tribute to her grandmother, I thought. This was knit in fingering weight yarn, and the bright pink color is by the Wayward Tint in the Electric Heart color. I think that's appropriately named. And then the contrasting cream and speckled, it has some specks of green, blue, some pinks in there, some blips of yellow. That is by the dyer You Knit I Dye, D-Y-E, and it was in the Frosty Morning colorway. This was just a pleasure to knit. I love how it turned out. I love the bright color, and it made me really happy to put this on this morning. So that is what I am wearing. I don't have any finished objects this week, but I do have a couple of half finished objects. So I bet you can guess. They are socks, yes. So my first sock that I finished, this I'm calling my Hibernate sock. This yarn is by Knitterly Things, and this was her January club colorway. She runs a self-striping year-long club, and I subscribe. So this was her January color, and the colorway name is Hibernate, and I used magic loop. I cast on 64 stitches and just traditional cuff down sock with the heel flap and gusset, which is my favorite, and then a rounded toe. I tried it on, yay, and it does fit. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. The yarn is and was lovely to work with. And so that goes into my work in progress, which is the second sock of this pair. And this is what I have so far. So I have the cuff and I have the leg, and I am actually right at the point where I need to put in the heel. So if you are not familiar with the stitch markers, probably a lot of you are. This is a technique I learned from Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady podcast. She will put in a light bulb stitch marker every 10 rounds just to help her count out her rows, so then you would know, rounds, so then you would know how many rounds that you've done before you put in your heel. So it's your way of marking your sock, so you know exactly how many rounds you have for your leg. And then I do it all the way down the sock, so then I would know exactly from my other sock how long I would need to make my foot. So I am really excited that I'm already on the second sock of this, and hopefully it will get some more progress this coming week. All right, my second half finished object is a new one, so you haven't seen it, but I did talk about the yarn on my last podcast, and I did share the pattern that I was hoping to make. So the pattern that I used is called Wish You Were Here Socks, and it's by the Kitchen Sink Shop. It is a free pattern on Etsy. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that, but it has a lovely lace texture. So it has a lace texture on one side on the right foot, and then it's mirrored on the left foot. So let me just read a little bit. I thought this was a sweet sentiment. She says, like a postcard from your favorite trip, these shorty socks are the perfect pattern to knit while on vacation or with a special skein of yarn picked up in your travels. So I think that's really nice, and I think for special skeins of yarn that maybe you picked up from a trip or maybe someone sent to you, this would be a great pattern to use. And I know I will be using this again in the future. But I do have my first sock done, and I was craving a little bit of lace work. If you remember from my last podcast, I talked about how on my projects, my sock projects and my sweater projects, I was all at the point where it was just simply stockinette in the round. So stockinette knitting for miles and miles, it feels like. So I just wanted a little something different. So I cast this sock on, and hopefully you can see that beautiful lace detail on this beautiful bright color yarn. So this yarn is by Wildflower yarn. She is an Etsy dyer located in the UK. And this yarn is called, let me check, Painting Rainbows, I believe. Let me just consult my tag here. Yes, it is called Painting Rainbows, and how appropriately named. So, excuse me. I am planning to gift these this spring, so I thought this would be a lovely, bright, colorful, and cheery color. And I love how it knit up. I love the detail, the lace detail. It was just enough to keep me interested, and it felt like this project just flew by. It really did. So I have not cast on the second sock yet, but I will do so very, very soon. All right. So with that, on to some works in progress. The first one I will show is my Felix pullover. This is a pattern by Amy Christoffers. And I mentioned Colleen earlier in this podcast, and she also is knitting the Felix cardigan, and she's actually knitting it in the same yarn a different color, but I thought that was fun, and we've been talking a little bit back and forth. So the yarn is Queensland Kathmandu Chunky. This was a yarn I bought on closeout several years ago, and it is in the bright raspberry color. And you can see this is where I was last time. So it's about 10 and a half inches since the last time I podcast. So that's some really good progress. And I have not tried it on yet, but I think I'm at the point after this podcast today, I am going to put the waist, or I'm going to put this on waist yarn and try it on, because it's probably very close to the length that I want it before I add. It looks about 2 inches of ribbing. So this is coming along really, really nicely, and I will be so excited to have this done. Yeah. So my next work in progress, I'm really excited to share, because this has gotten a lot of love these last 2 weeks. And this is my Knitwords sweater. It's a pattern by Cori, Eichelberger, I Rock Knits. And it's this fun colorwork sweater that has the words knit pearl yarn on it. Excuse me. And if you can see, this is where I was last time. I have completed the body of the sweater, and I have completed one sleeve of the sweater, and I am on my second sleeve. So I am so happy with how this is going. This sweater, or the pattern, was written with short sleeves in mind, but I knew I wanted this to be a long sleeve sweater. It's oversized. I kind of wanted it to be nice and sweatshirty feeling, so I knew I wanted to knit long sleeves. So I looked on Ravelry at another pattern using sport weight yarn. I should say that this is knit with brown sheep nature spun sport weight yarn. So I looked on Ravelry, trying to look in the free patterns for a long sleeve top down sweater, so I could kind of compare the numbers and try to gauge how I would do my decreases. So these light bulb stitch markers, very useful. I love my light bulb stitch markers. They are notating the decreases on my sleeve. The upper part of the sleeve was decreased every 7 rounds, and then it was every 5 rounds as I realized I needed to start decreasing more. So I decreased down the arm, and then I did a twisted rib cuff for 2 inches. And I did try this on, and I had to try it a couple times just to make sure I got the arm length that I wanted. Excuse me. And I do have the arm length I want. There may be a little bit much fabric, maybe a little slouchy in the arms, but I'm okay with that. Again, slouchy sweatshirt style sweater. So I have made really good progress on this. I'm really excited with the progress. So I hope to get this sleeve done within the next day or 2 or 3. I think 2 days will do it. And then I can weave in my ends and block it, and hopefully have this as a finished object very soon. With my Felix pullover, that's really close, and it's really chunky yarn. It goes by pretty fast. So I am thinking that I may have 2 finished sweaters by the end of March. I don't know. I'm hoping. I think that would be really, really great. So this is my Knitwords sweater. All right, the last work in progress I will show you is a crocheted project. This is my Granny Stripe blanket. The pattern is by Lucy of Attic 24. This is kind of big to hold up and show you, but I will show the progress keeper. Here is where I was the last time I showed it to you. So you can see I have made a fair bit on there. So it's getting longer. It's getting longer. And I shared the last time that I was using a magic knot ball. And I had measured this when I made it, and it was around 288 grams. And I weighed this ball on the scale this morning, and it's about 170. So that means I have used over 100 grams of yarn, which is the equivalent of one full skein of fingering weight yarn. So that's a full, I mean, that's a pretty good bit of crochet that I put into this blanket. I only I only crochet on this on the last 2 Sundays. Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady started this Scrappy Sunday where you work on your scrappy projects, whether it be, you know, a scrappy crochet blanket, a scrappy knit blanket, or scrappy socks, anything where you're using scraps of yarn. So I have only worked on this on Sundays, 2 Sundays, so that's a fair bit of crochet time into this, and it's really fun to see how the colors change in that magic knot ball. And I see some pinks coming up in there, so I'll be excited to get to that pink probably this Sunday. All right. Excuse me. Take a drink of water here. All right, I will share some stash acquisitions or some yarn that ended up coming into my mailbox over the last couple of weeks. All right, I'm just gonna grab back here from my basket some beautiful yarny goodness that came. So the first is the February installment of Knitterly Things Self-Striping Club. So hopefully by now everybody has received their February colorway or their yarn. So if you don't want to see this, please look away. But this is, again, Knitterly Things sock yarn. It's the February 2021 colorway, and it's called Bubbletopia. And how fun is that? That is going to be so fun to see those beautiful bright colors worked up. Pinks and bright aquas and bright yellows and oranges and gray. That's gonna be super fun. So I'll be anxious to see how that works up sometime soon, hopefully. All right, I was craving pink. I love pink. Pink is probably my favorite color if you haven't noticed that already. But I found this beautiful skein on Etsy. The dyer is Fiber Me This, and this is the color Zsa Zsa, so Zsa Zsa Gabor, how appropriately named. This is so beautiful. This may be one of the most favorite skeins of yarn I have ever purchased. I absolutely love this color. I probably am planning to make a shawl with this. I have a couple of shawls that I have been looking at, but no definite plans. But with sweaters and socks, I think I'm craving making a shawl now. So that probably will be next after my sweaters are done. So I would like to pair this probably with mohair, not held together, but in a shawl. So I found 3 beautiful contenders on Pineapple Yarns, and boy, is her yarn beautiful. Oh, this is just beautiful. So bright, so pink, so Carla pink. I love it. So Pineapple Yarn, this is her mohair silk, and this color is called Coastal Strawberry. This color is called Fortunately Pink. And this bright one is called Starstruck. So I'm thinking really any of these could be good contenders to go with this in a shawl. Yeah, so some fun bright colors for an upcoming shawl for spring. So let's see. I think that is about all for today. I want to thank you so much for watching. I do have show notes below talking about the projects that I talked about on this episode. If there are any questions that I haven't answered by putting them in the description box below, please feel free to ask a question in the comments, or you can follow me on Ravelry or Instagram. I am cbcraftygirl on both. I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe to this video so that you know when my next episode comes up with more yarny adventures. So with that, I hope you all have had a great couple of weeks. I hope that you are feeling creative and happy with your craft projects, knitting, crochet, stitching, whatever is bringing you joy. And I will say goodbye for now. So have a lovely week and happy making. Bye-bye.